person was that? That was you. Okay. Is it Viviana?
Yeah.
Okay. Here, why don't we do this? I'll let each one of the members of your panel introduce themselves, and if they can, very, very quickly, give us what their involvement in the citizen panel is. Okay? Since you're speaking, why don't we start maybe down on this end?
My name is Jim Weigel. I'm the superintendent of schools in the Rose Street Media School.
Sure, you look familiar.
I'm Susan Burkhoff, and I'm a critical care nurse at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I'm also a former emergency transport nurse at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I've been all over the U.S. Via fixed wing, helicopter, and ambulance, picking up the sickest children all over, and medically managing them.
Great. Yeah, here.
My name is Seth Kovnat. I'm a structural engineer in the aerospace field. I have extensive knowledge of piping, hazardous material in the aerospace industry, mostly in spacecraft and aircraft.
I'm Eric Friedman. I'm a landowner in Delaware County who's affected by Sunoco's proposed Mariner East project. I'm government pilot by background, and I currently work for the Federal Aviation Administration as an aviation safety inspector in the air carrier operations.
Viviana, you can start.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and good morning, Chairman Barrar, Representative Sonato, committee members, and all members still remaining. My name is Viviana Dustling. I'm a resident of Middletown Township in Delaware County, parented-free, and a veteran naval officer. I served 9 years as a helicopter pilot, where my main ground jobs were in operations, aviation safety, and emergency preparedness. I served in these roles and as an aircraft commander on 2 deployments in the Persian Gulf, and during evacuation and humanitarian relief efforts following both the 2005 Indonesian tsunami and Hurricane Katrina. I coordinated an emergency response plan for one base, covering a wide range of potential threats from natural disasters to hazardous materials leaks. And I know that planning for anything less than the worst case scenario puts lives at risk. One way to analyze the degree of any risk is by assessing severity times likelihood. In aviation, this approach has produced remarkable improvements in safety. If the potential severity of a threat is high, but the likelihood is extremely low, we often conclude that risk is acceptable. Likewise, if the potential severity is very low, a hazard that has a high likelihood of occurring may be tolerable. This can also be applied to pipelines. In Delaware County, we are particularly concerned with the combination of extremely high severity and unacceptably high likelihood associated with the existing Mariner 1 and proposed Mariner East 2 pipelines. In regards to severity, the 20-inch Mariner East 2 pipeline would transport natural gas liquids, ethane, propane, and butane under extremely high pressure, up to 1,440 pounds per square inch. If leaked, these extremely flammable and explosive materials will form an odorless, colorless, and heavier than air gas cloud, capable of causing rapid asphyxiation prior to ignition. A large-scale leak from this proposed ME2 pipeline would result in death or severe injuries from burns, shrapnel, brain trauma, and asphyxiation for those within a blast or impact zone. When the ATEX ethane pipeline, equivalent to the proposed ME2, failed near Folensby, West Virginia in January 2015, just 13 months after it was placed in service, damage and thermal impacts extended to 2,000 feet. In Delaware County, where the population density averages 3,000 people per square mile, thousands of people, homes, businesses, schools, and other vulnerable sites exist within such an impact zone. For example, Glenwood Elementary School, where my daughter attends first grade, is well within the blast zone, demonstrated in the Folensby accident. At Glenwood Elementary and at many other schools across our Commonwealth, there might be no opportunity for evacuation if a leak occurs nearby. And yet evacuation is the only option. With 445 children and 60 staff in harm's way at this single school, a leak similar to Folensby would be a catastrophic event. With the potential for such a catastrophic event to impact vulnerable populations, we must consider the likelihood of a leak occurring. Unfortunately, pipelines leak. The frequency is well documented in data by the federal government. Sunoco Pipeline, the operator of ME1 and proposed ME2, has had 279 now reported hazardous liquid leaks since 2006, averaging 2 per month for the past 10 years. The rate of large hazardous liquid leaks per pipeline mile has been steadily increasing, reaching an all-time high in 2015. Just last month, the Sunoco pipeline leaked 55,000 gallons of gasoline into the Susquehanna River. Last week, a pipeline in Cambria County leaked propane, forcing a 5-mile evacuation. In April 2016, a gas pipeline explosion in Westmoreland County critically injured a man in a house 800 feet away. Fortunately, most pipeline accidents to date have occurred in sparsely populated areas. When similar pipelines are proposed to be constructed in densely populated, high-consequence areas, we must consider how a leak or explosion can impact public safety and to what extent we are or are not prepared for such event. No regulator has reviewed the Mariner pipeline route or siting with respect to pipelines to public safety due to this line's misclassification as a liquids line. Nor has any specific emergency planning been required for our area. Sunoco's generic protocol for a known or suspected leak is to evacuate upwind on foot to a distance of at least 1/2 mile. Such a plan is both impractical and implausible. First, how do we know a leak has occurred? We cannot smell nor see the combustible gas. If Sunoco is able to detect leak, how quickly are first responders notified? How are schools and residents in their homes rapidly notified of the need to immediately evacuate without use of an ignition source? The proximity of my daughter's school to the proposed pipeline means that with a wind of just 2 miles per hour, the gas would arrive at the building in less than 5 minutes. Do we have a notification system that can provide my child and her classmates the necessary time to evacuate? We do not. In fact, the most likely notification of a leak would be the resulting explosion, given the fact that something as ordinary as a cell phone or a light switch can serve as an ignition source. Typical valve sites are 6 miles apart, and the volume of hazardous liquids within a 20-inch pipeline segment of that length is enormous, over 500,000 gallons. Even if a leak was detected immediately and the valves immediately closed, all of that material trapped within that 6 miles then will escape, expanding into 20 million cubic feet of combustible gas, carrying the energy equivalent to a small nuclear bomb. Because this gas is heavier than air, it will not dissipate as lighter than air methane, the natural gas we are accustomed to in our homes. Instead, it will concentrate close to the ground, moving and expanding according to topography and wind direction, creating a fire blanket back to the pipeline if ignited. This is why rapid evacuation is so critical. This is why a 3-mile radius evacuation zone was established in Unionville, Pennsylvania, where a methane pipeline failed in June 2015. And again last week in Alabama, when a hazardous liquids pipeline ruptured and ignited. We are not prepared to evacuate a 6-mile diameter circle in densely populated Delaware or Chester County. An evacuation area of that size in southeast Pennsylvania could contain 80,000 people or more. It is not remotely feasible to notify and evacuate close to that many people on foot in the necessary short period of time, given the limitations of the ignition sources. The impracticality of evacuating a large number of residents means that hundreds, if not thousands of people may be trapped within a blast or impact zone. First responders would establish a safety perimeter within which they could not enter, preventing immediate access to the most severely injured patients. Highly volatile liquids in their gaseous form rapidly displace oxygen in the blood, but people suffering from asphyxiation could be unable to access life-saving care. For injured people who make it outside the safety perimeter, first responders would be challenged to adequately treat complex, traumatic, life-threatening injuries. Medevac efforts to transport large numbers of casualties to area hospitals would be quickly overwhelmed, and all these challenges become particularly problematic when pediatric victims are involved. But I did not come to this issue of the pipeline due to my experience as a naval officer or as a result of my training in emergency preparedness. I came to this issue as a mother. I imagine my beautiful daughter with her bright smile in her first grade classroom near Sunoco's pipeline. And I try not to imagine what would happen if this pipeline leaked near her school. I try not to imagine her teachers panic, knowing she has to get our children out and quickly. I try not to imagine school personnel trying to keep young children calm, communicating the urgency of leaving the building, getting these children to actually follow multi-step directions. I try not to imagine them running. I won't allow myself to imagine the children who can't walk or run, or the explosion. Because if the gas ignites, the overpressure from the blast and resulting firewall would be lethal, with no hope of survival for those closest. I am trained to compartmentalize as a military pilot so that I can act in the event of an emergency. So this is where I turn my mom brain off and my pilot brain on. What is the degree of this risk? What are the resources? How many helicopters are available to evacuate pediatric patients? How many trauma centers with helopads? Is timely evacuation feasible? Is there any possible way to mitigate the risks? If the answer is yes, why hasn't a plan been put in place for Marietta East 1, which already runs within just a few hundred feet of schools? And if the answer is no, why are we considering the construction of much larger, highly volatile liquids pipelines in densely populated communities? This is why I'm here today. Military pilots are trained to assess risks and mitigate them in advance. Our community has assessed the likelihood and severity of the leak from this proposed pipeline and discovered enormous risks. We need you to take a step back, look at the bigger picture, and consider, is there an alternative approach to responsibly utilize our generous natural resources, create jobs, boost our economy, while truly safeguarding the public? Given our abundant resources, Pennsylvania can be the model for the rest of the country with a responsible energy infrastructure addressing all those concerns. At a minimum, we need your legislative action to address the regulatory gaps around pipeline siting, as well as the misclassification of this particular type of pipeline as a liquids line. We need your legislative action to require the development of credible notification, evacuation, and emergency preparedness procedures. I cannot in good conscience send my child to school, nor remain in our community without such issues resolved any more than I could embark upon a mission with unacceptable risk to my air crew. If I cannot mitigate such risks, it was my duty to cancel the mission. That was my obligation as an aircraft commander responsible for the lives of my air crew. Similarly, the primary function of our government is to provide for public safety. We the people institute governments in order to secure our rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. This proposed pipeline poses an unacceptable level of risk to our lives, our children's lives, and the lives of thousands of Pennsylvanians. We look to you now to uphold your oath, to recognize this risk, to mitigate it in advance with appropriate legislation, and make every effort to protect your constituents. Thank you very much for your time this morning. I'm also joined, as you said, today by experts from the community who've already introduced themselves and will make a brief statement. Thank you.
Great. Did anyone else? Let me just, real quick, let me announce to the committee, we did receive several, late last night, I did not have the opportunity to make copies for all the committee members, but we received resolutions from Middletown Township with expressing concerns for this media borough, the borough of Swarthmore, Thornbury Township, and also the Rose Tree Media School District. Would you like to make any comments from the school district point of view?
I would, thank you, Chairman. Typically, and there have been